Welcome to Game Set Life, and it's one of my favorite times of the week. I'm here with one of my heroes, Rick Macci. He is the Hall of Fame tennis coach, but an amazing mentor, teacher as well to so many people off the court. And it's such a blessing to have you here with me today for our new show. Thank you, Rick, for joining me.
I'm glad to be here. Last week was beyond epic, and today's going to be even better.
Yeah, it's amazing the community that exists that all share a mindset. A common mindset is a simple bond of all these spirits that you've trained and coached and mentored, as well as I've surrounded as an agent myself with, and been intentional about surrounding myself with the people with the appropriate mindset. But I was thinking about it as we get to do more and more together. It's easy to deal with people who have the appropriate mindset. What do you do when you come upon someone who has extreme skills, knowledge, but they just don't have the mindset? Is there any hope for those people, or is there anything we can do to transform or shift that mindset?
First off, absolutely. And believe it or not, that's my favorite because my mindset is I love challenges. If someone's really negative or they look at the world through a different lens or they're a little bit lazy, you know, that's what coaching's all about. Winner finds a way. I love that. I don't want everything perfect already there, even though I think for the ranking or to go into pro tennis, that could be a good thing. But I like the other. And that's how I make a bigger impact. I change attitudes, I change mindset. Just today on the court, I challenged all the kids. I said, listen, you're getting a free half-hour lesson from me, a free hoodie, and a free t-shirt if you don't make excuses for 1 week. And I got this on video, and my eyes see everything. So I'm going to be keeping score. So I'm trying to bribe them to make these changes because there's just too many influences. But no, those are my favorites, believe it or not, Dave, because it's more of a challenge. And that's the art of coaching. It's a science a little bit, but that's the art of coaching to try to connect the dots for that person on that day. And it can change the future of their life, the way they think. And that's what I love about the position I'm in, how I can help people. And that's the best feeling in the world.
And one of the nuances of mindset that I also find interesting is that even people who have good or great mindsets don't always have good or great mindsets. And if it's applicable to sports or to family or to business, even the greatest mindset can become a detriment if they're not good under pressure or other circumstances that quickly change what seems to be a perfect mindset into a detriment or into an acceleration in the wrong direction. Uh, is that something that you can coach and mentor as well in situational mindset?
Absolutely. Listen, we're all human. We're going to make mistakes. We're going to get nervous. Things are going to change. It's not rainbow, lollipop, and sunshine. You're how you solve problems. That's what this is all about. And that's what I try to teach, especially in the sport I'm in, because you're going to make a lot of mistakes. You could lose more points than win and still win the match. And that's the wild card that separates great from good. How you handle all this stuff. So yeah, you can train for all this. The toughest thing is most of the students hear you, but they don't listen because there's too many other influencers. Their friends. Who knows what goes on when they go at home? You're saying right, someone else is saying left, but they're around me enough. And the ones that listen and their support from the family, it's going to help them not only in the game of tennis or any sport, but the game of life. So yeah, it can definitely be taught. It helps if you have that family dynamic that is really already on track, been there, done that a little bit. But no, it can definitely be taught. And the bigger the challenge, every coach that's watching this or listening, that's your job. And you don't stop. You got to be like a woodpecker. You just keep pecking till you feel they're on the right track. And that's what I love about this because it's a continuous evolution to try to make it better and better and better. And before you know it, you look back and you got someone very mentally strong that can handle a lot of things.
And in that same personality characteristic, it's one that I think you and we share a lot of the same personality characteristics, but it also will tend to have a person be too hard on themselves. And I have found, looking back in my own career, that a lot of times I've been too hard on myself. And, in fact, when I was a young executive in my 20s, one of my mentors, I said, he said, you got to treat people, Dave, better. And I said, well, you told me that to treat people like I would treat myself. He said, Dave, if you treat everyone like you treat yourself, you're going to lose every employee that we have
I
here.
like that. I
So,
like that.
how do we temper that, being hard on ourselves compared to striving for the best?
Yeah, well, first off, the guy that told you that, I like the guy already, because that's true. You know what I mean? And it comes down to you as a person. You got to understand, not every human is going to be the same. Everybody's different, and you got to figure out what makes people tick and how to push the right buttons. And you can be hard on yourself, and you can expect a lot from yourself, but you just got to keep pushing, and you're going to fail. And the more you fail, look at this as an opportunity to get better. Everybody tells me my kid's a perfectionist. I get that all the time. Everybody's a perfectionist, but no one's ever going to be perfect. The greatest of all time in anything, sports or business. So I have to explain and I educate people that, you're going to fail, but it's the mind and body. You got, like we talked about before, you got to be very competitive, very intense. You take your foot off the gas, but you got to be calm. That's the art of the deal. And that's what makes magic, and people become, the best of the best.
And you're speaking about, thinking about our kids, and probably too highly. I always say you're never as good as they say you are, and you're never as bad. And we're definitely never as good as our parents say we are. Now, you and I both are parents. And although we mentor, teach, and coach millions of people around the world now, it's a different game when we're at home, and completely different. And where have you found the biggest differences from being a father compared to being a coach, mentor, and teacher to millions?
First off, great question, because people are surprised here, as I raised three teenage daughters by myself from age 13, besides working, 60, 70 hours a week. I should be in the Hall of Fame just for that, Dave.
You
They
are.
all look, yeah, you're right. But the parenting Hall of Fame, and they all look good, So,
Yeah.
I was dealing with the trifecta there. There's a lot of moving parts, but I treat them all differently. And, I'm just proud of all of them, and it hasn't been a straight line. And I've been there for them every step of the way. And I think that's the most important thing. They didn't want to play tennis. They don't have to play tennis. Just be the best you can be. I try to lead by example. I can't expect them to get up at 3:30 in the morning and run a half mile like me. Like I said before, my name's Richard Allen Macy. My one calls me Richard Alien Macy, because she doesn't, she just thinks I go to a different beat. It works for me. And I want them to be happy, be the best they can, treat other people, the best they can, care about others more than yourself. It's a little deeper with your own kids, because you're coming home at night, you're going to see them. And I have a little bit more control to some degree over my own family, where the other ones, it's more of a slipperier slope. So at the end of the day, first off, it's a great question. And for any parent, you love them all the same, but you're probably going to have to treat them a little different and not compare them, because that's not going to get the job done.
Yeah, it's so true. And, speaking of, a different background, you and I both grew up in the Midwest. And, there's a certain energy or ethic of waking up early, putting in a full day work every day. And you're someone who hasn't even sat down on the tennis court in 35 years. To that end, we have a different perspective on work ethic than an entire generation that exists today. How do you reconcile, the past of, growing up in a situation that doesn't exist today to, you know, projecting or, I think applying the best parts of what we learned in that Midwest work ethic to a reality that exists today of this complex, like you said, multiple influences, a different idea of what discipline means, what work ethic means. Have you been able to translate the way that you grew up to today and a new generation? I know you coach some of the world's best 11-year-olds, for example. Do they, does it translate as, old middle-aged white guys, what we learn?
Well, before I answer that, you said background. And today you win the background. You got like 100,000 seat stadium behind you. But I do have King Richard stuff behind me. But I think you
Nice.
win today. Last week you're in your living room. So we're 1-1. We're keeping score here
All
on
right,
the
we'll keep
background.
score.
But
Is it, I can win more points but lose the game? Is that the way this works?
there you go. But no, listen, I grew up, my father passed away when I was 10 years old. It's me, my mom, and sister. And you don't think about it, at the time, and just everything that you acquire. I did a lot on my own. I was always first there. I was a guy like calling up everybody to play basketball at 7 in the morning. Other parents would get mad. Why is this Macy guy calling my son on a Saturday? I've always been a leader. I like to organize, and you got to love what you do and have passion. And those are the qualities I try to put in young men and women. If you love it, that's going to weather the storm. I'm just telling you, Dave, you know this because you're the leader in the clubhouse about a lot of this stuff. If you just love it, not like it, that won't cut it. If you love it, you're going to be able to take a punch. You'll be more bulletproof. And I get the people to love playing tennis because it's serious, but it's fun. And I create a passion, and that's going to, like I said, weather the storm. So, yeah. And today, there's just so many influences, but the hard work, that's never going to change. I don't care if it's 1,000 years ago or 1,000 years from today. You're going to have to work hard because if you don't work hard, someone's going to outwork you. Okay. There's always someone to take your place, and you better feel like that. The minute you say, wow, I've made it or I'm there, before you know it, you're fifth in line. And then you just keep going the other way. And so I try to tell these stories about everybody. If you're not getting better, you're getting worse. But the work ethic is no matter what you do, whatever you're going to do, if you just try to outwork the competition, whether you do or not, you're going to be successful in whatever venue you choose in life. And that's the biggest thing they get from me. But I don't really tell them that. I lead by example. And when you lead by example, I think subliminally or organically, they pick up on that. And their parents even say, look at Rick at even 68. But I'm not trying to do that. I just love helping others, no matter what age, what level, anytime, anywhere.
You and I share that as well. And I always tell people that I have these great 4 children, not perfect, by the way, so I don't fall into that group, but I have these wonderful children who I adore. But I always say my kids don't listen to me, but I know they watch me. And
No,
that's real.
absolutely. And you asked me something, what's a big difference? The kids that I train, they never really ask me for money. Where the ones that are my kids, they ask me for money now and then. So that's a big difference. The cheddar, I'm making one better and the other asks for cheddar. So that's the difference. You know what? I like helping them because, as you know, just like you have helped me, everybody needs a little boost and little help. So I love helping them. So it's great.
That's wonderful. I still have my wife, so she doesn't even ask. So that's
And when you come to
exactly.
Florida, I am going to give her a lesson because I'm going to help her out. So when you
Thank you
come to
very
Florida, I
much.
look forward to helping her.
She's super excited. And speaking of people that outdo their limitations, that just set a new standard for themselves. And we were talking about work ethic and discipline. We have an extraordinary guest today. You wouldn't think we'd be able to one up. I was worried about bringing Austin Eckler on last week because it's like, okay, the poor guy that follows Austin Eckler, what's he gonna do? Well, I think we're breaking records all the time, like he has, because he's a 10-time world record breaking explorer. He is a top speaker, which anytime I can get on the same stage with Colin O'Brady, it's an honor to be with him. It's like sharing a tennis court with Serena Williams. And he's also, by the way, a New York Times bestselling author. And I actually not only read his last book, but I did it, which is incredible. And he wrote a book called The 12-Hour Walk Welcome to Game Set Life. Our incredible guest, Colin O'Brady. How are you, buddy?
Good to see you, my friend. Great to be here with you.
Yeah, I got
Colin, welcome. I'm excited to have you. Thank you
Uh,
so much.
yeah, great to be here with both of you. It's awesome.
well, I had to introduce you to my new friend, Rick Macy, because you guys have so much in common. And, I haven't touched on this subject, but I want you to give a little bit of background on the inspiration of the 12-hour walk. And then I want to get Rick's kind of input in why he thinks this is so important to do to invest one mind and unlock your best self. Give me an idea what inspired you with this idea of a 12-hour walk.
Yeah, I'll try to keep it concise, but the origin story is, in 2018, I was the first person in history to walk across the entire continent of Antarctica solo, unsupported and fully human powered. So, in short, I drug a 375-pound sled with all my food, gear, and supplies 1,000 miles across the frozen continent, becoming the first person to ever do that. There's all sorts of ups and downs and stories, as you can probably imagine. But I was actually racing another guy head to head, this badass military British guy, Captain Lou Rudd. And he kicked my butt the first week, quite honestly. And I caught up to him. And then I realized, A, I wasn't going to be able to stay in front of him. And B, I was going to run out of food if I didn't go I thought I could never go more than 10 hours per day. And I finally said, you know what? I got to go 12. And I tried that just once. I did this one time. And I still had 50 days in front of me. I thought that's the absolute limit of my capacity. I did it once. But Rick probably see this with his tennis stars and things like that. You prove yourself, you can do it once. You go, wait, can I do that one more time? Can I do that one more time after that? One more time after that, right? You completely level up. And so for the next literally 50 days in a row, 12 hours became my norm. And I found these deep places in my mind, these deep places of flow and peace and calm in the silence, in the stillness of the solitude. So fast forward to COVID, when we're all locked in our houses, and I found myself kind of just disrupted from my normal, typical, positive, peaceful mindset, at that moment in time. And I said, when was the last time I actually felt deeply connected with my mind, body, and spirit? And I said, strangely enough, even though it was minus 50 degrees outside, even though Antarctica felt like it was killing me, even though I was starving when I was out there, I actually found this peace in the stillness and silence of these 12-hour days pulling my sled. And so during COVID, I walked out my front door and I went on a 12-hour walk, literally on my front door in Oregon. And when I came back, my wife looked at me and she said, "You're back." I told her I was coming home for dinner, but she goes, "You're back." And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" She goes, "You are more calm. You are more at peace than you've ever been." So again, trying to be concise here, the long story short, the book, the origin, and ultimately what my goal is here is to inspire a global movement. And I'm so excited to hear that you have now done the 12-hour walk, Dave. But we've had tens of thousands of people all around the world already do this in the first couple months, 40 different countries, 6 continents, people from all different fitness levels, ages, etc. It doesn't matter. It's not a race. It doesn't matter how far you go. You can take as many breaks as you want. This meets you right where you are. But in today's society that is spinning out of control with distractions, like, we need to connect to ourselves at times. And so being outside in nature alone for 12 hours, I've been seeing it have incredible life-changing benefits. And so I'm very passionate about spreading that message really for everyone to tap into that inside themselves.
Rick,
No,
could you do
no,
it?
Dave.
Could you do
Yeah,
it?
no, listen, the ripple from that and how Colin, just inspires people, to challenge your limits, not limit your challenges. I mean, it's beyond amazing. And this is what people, because I read his story. I didn't know of Colin before you said he's coming on, and I glanced at everything, and I thought it was Tom Brady. And I'm more than happy to have Colin O'Brady on the show after I read his bio. Not only is he on Mount Everest, in my mind, he's on Mount Rushmore. So getting that out of the way, what an amazing person wanting to give back, but more importantly, to share his story to help others. I think that's the underlying factor here. It's not like, I won all these grand slams and I've done all this and the Explorer of the Year or whatever. That's the icing. But to give back to others, to want to help the world and to help others, to me, that's the greatest gift any human can do. So that's kind of the common thread here that all of us had or have, that we're helping others. We just have different conduits to deliver that message. But I love this guy we just met.
Yeah, no doubt. I have a question for both of you because it's really interesting, and I'm trying to understand human nature. Historically, I study history, all aspects of history, because I think the only common denominator is human nature never changes. And I think the most interesting thing that I picked up on, and I don't think you shared that part of the story with me, Colin, was the idea that I did 12 hours one day and then was able to do, and I thought that was all I was going to be able to do. And you did it for 50 straight days. And I see so many times in life that we take that measure. We say, you know what, I don't even know if I can do this one day. And then the next thing we know, not only are we doing that every day, but that's like our warm up. It becomes a warm up during a day. And I know, Rick, you've seen it with probably so many athletes. What is it about human nature that, number one, tells us, no, this will only be one day. I can only do this limited, whatever it is. And then all of a sudden, because it is very sudden, everything else takes time. The very next day, you're like, oh, yeah, and then it's 50 days or 365. What do you think it is about human nature that, one tells us we can't, and then once we do it, it becomes the norm?
Well, I think that, I love this question because it really is the core of what the 12-Hour Walk book is written about, and that's limiting beliefs, right? We as humans have this sort of protective instinct to tell ourselves what we can't do, to kind of just keep at a base level and survive, right? And I've asked people, thousands and thousands of people, what's standing in the way of you living your best life? And I didn't get thousands of different answers. I got 10 different answers thousands of times, which is, I don't have enough money. I don't have enough time. What if people criticize me? What if I fail? These are common limiting beliefs that we have, right? But these aren't truths. These are beliefs. These are in our own mind. And I'm a big believer that we are the stories that we tell ourselves, right? And so we get to choose that story that we're telling ourselves. And I imagine for Rick, the athletes that he has, young athletes coming up, there's a difference between being like, oh my God, I don't know if I'm going to win this match or whatever, versus like, I'm going to win Wimbledon one day. A 16-year-old kid believing that, right? And saying that out loud and expressing that. And so a lot of the teaching in the 12-Hour Walk really facilitates this. I'd love to hear Rick's point of view on this as well. Someone who I greatly admire, is I think that in our minds, we have a choice. And I believe that the mind is a muscle. We get to flex and develop it and train it. And if we allow the kind of that negativity and that loop to take over us, that's the direction, we go to. It's like a race car driver. They say, don't ever look at the wall, right? They're always looking at where they're going next, right? They're actually training their mind to go in front of that. And so one thing I love about the 12-Hour Walk is even when I suggest it to people, people are listening, they're hearing about it for the first time. What ends up happening, I don't care who you are, even someone who's really determined or whatever, some limiting belief pops up in your mind, like, wait, what? You want me to turn off my phone? Like, I'm busy. I've got a job. I got kids.
That's mine,
right?
Yeah.
Like, exactly. Like, but what I love about it, I always say people that the 12-Hour Walk doesn't start when you walk out your front door. It starts in this moment, because in this moment, me just suggesting it for you as a human, you can't help but react to that. And I'm holding up a mirror to you. But whatever limiting belief you might be applying in this moment, I don't have enough time, or I'm too busy, or I'm going to be uncomfortable, my feet are going to hurt by the end of it, I don't want to do that. Be aware of that, because most likely that is the same limiting belief that is coming up for you time and time again. But to your question, Dave, when you prove to yourself that you can do something, that you actually prove it to yourself once, you do the 12-hour, like, go, oh, I had that limiting belief before. Or for me out there in Antarctica, I could never go more than 10 hours per day. Then you prove to yourself, not just in your mind, but actually somatically and experience that you did it. Oh, wait, I can win the next tennis match. I can win the next 10. I could go 2 hours further. I can do that. And like you said, now that winning mentality becomes routine and part of you, and you rewrite that story you tell yourself.
And no, absolutely. Listen, there's a lot to unpack here. Confidence breeds confidence. And what I do is I make kids do things they don't want to do, like whether it come to net or try this or try that. And then when I put them in a situation where it's more real, me not feeding the ball or close to an actual game situation, and they prove it to themselves, they get the big C. Okay. They get the confidence, and that just stimulates more confidence. And when you don't think you can do certain things, it's amazing. Because if I tell the kid, will you do this if I give you $100? And they'll go, of course I would do it. And I go, well, if you do it, you might win $100. So you got it backwards. It's a chicken and the egg type of thing. So that's a motivational thing with all the kids. They all have it backwards, especially in today's society. They want to take the escalator instead of the steps like you did, climbing those mountains back in Washington as a little boy, venturing around, So, no, what you just said is so powerful, and once you do it, and then you feel better about yourself, you want to do it more and more, and it takes on a life of its own. It's just initially getting going, and that's where I come to the plate and help motivate, educate, stimulate, and get the kids on the right path. I get people to believe, and they have no reason to believe, but they just believe even though they're failing and failing. And that's the job of a coach or a mentor. And that's why I love when I read your story and everything you're doing, because it's just affecting millions of people around the world. I love it.
And Colin, when I read the book, my entire time in the back of my head, I was like, this is so good. It makes so much sense, but I'm never effing going to do it. And then this is in the back of my mind. Like, there's no way I'm going to find 12 hours with no telephone and no interviews and no coaching calls and no coincidence. I study physics and quantum physics and metaphysics to try to figure out the math behind some of my theories, or some sort of semblance of math behind theories. And that next day, as I'm reading your book, going, this is awesome, but I can never do it. Actually, which is really, I read Parkinson's law about how things fit into space, and that if you tell yourself it's going to take me this much time to do it, to clean my garage, it's going to take you that much time to clean your garage. And the guy that says it's 6 hours, it takes him 6 hours. The guy takes 6 weeks, tells himself 6 weeks. So I utilize Parkinson's law to accommodate the 12 hours. So I took I knew my family was going to be gone one Saturday, and I knew they were going to be coming home at 4:00. And so I put all my interviews, coaching calls, shows that I had on that Saturday, which isn't as many as a normal weekday. And I said, I'm going to start at 3:00 in the morning and finish at 3 in the afternoon. And I'm going to somehow leave this telephone on my desk. After I meditate, I'm going. And oh my gosh, it was amazing how Parkinson's law fits into exactly what you were teaching and talking about with, by the way, super like you, Rick. This guy tells entertaining stories, so it goes so fast. You don't realize, you're engulfed into this. For me, my biggest takeaway was awareness. That it's great to be active, like Rick and I. We very rarely, I meditate for 20 minutes. Like, I even put a time limit on my meditation. But like, my awareness increased so much since I've done that I never noticed certain things, and certain things resonate with me so much more. Did you find through your journeys, did you raise your awareness through these struggles?
Absolutely. And I think that that's such a powerful and huge take home. And I hear that from so many other people. That's certainly been a part of my journey with a deep meditation practice, with spending time in the mountains and the solitudes of Antarctica, and even myself having the 12-hour walk. It's in my own personal toolkit now. It's a once per quarter type of thing for me, because what I realize is, look, I love that we can have this interview, digitally. We can talk to millions of people. That's amazing. I love social media as a way to connect people and bring people together, right? So I'm not vilifying technology, right? But there is a moment in time in our pretty high, fast moving society and culture at this point where we forget to look inward. We forget to take a second. And what happens is, 20-minute meditation on daily practice is amazing. But now and again, something longer, more extended, like the 12-hour walk. I hear this from people who do it, who send me feedback all the time. They go, I thought after 1 hour or 2 hours, like I kind of got it. But it was hour 9, hour 10, hour 11, when finally the brain, the mind, the body fully relaxes. And maybe your body's a little more tired, but you find that flow. Maybe a tennis match equivalent is it's that fifth set, 10th game or the fifth set where you're exhausted, you're in it, but you're just in it, right? There's the crowd is gone, the coach is gone, you're just fully in it. And I think that's flow, that's awareness. And that self-awareness has such a ripple effect, not just in the moment of having it, right? As you experience, but the ripple effect throughout the rest of your life, right? What am I reacting to in my daily life? How am I treating the people that I love? How am I making decisions? Am I just reacting impulsively, or am I actually having a little more self-awareness and attuning to my, sort of mind, body, soul in those moments? And so, yes, that has been probably the most powerful gift for me in all the work that I've done through meditation, through my expeditions, through the 12-hour walk, having that self-awareness, because once you have that, you can be a better entrepreneur. You can be a better athlete. You can be a better friend, a better spouse, a better father, all those things. It starts with having that personal self-awareness. It's not just good for you, but it's selfless in the sense that it has that effect on all of those around you that you're also having an impact on.
No, just so well put. The tentacles that come off of this are more powerful than the actual event. Like you said, the ripple effect. And that's what everybody has to understand. But it's just getting going. And like you said, it's like a running back. Once they get in there, the more carries, they get stronger. Or when they start playing a match, they're not tired anymore. You get going. It's just getting going, buying in and doing it. And you can definitely change your life. There's no doubt about it.
And Rick, what do you do, just before we let Colin go? What do you do in respect to meditation? I mean, obviously you're a little bit more seasoned in being able to, regulate a routine and a schedule, but you do wake up early. You run a half a mile every morning. We talk about movement meditation. Are there certain things you do every day that give you the same type of results that a 12-hour walk would give you?
Well, no, that's probably a lot more powerful. But I'm at the park every day at 5, and I do a lot of Zoom videos for kids in other parts of the world because there's a time difference. So a lot of times I'm in the parking lot by myself, and it's just a downtime of quiet in a park, just me and a bird and a squirrel, and there's not a lot going on, and I just regroup, and that tranquility is important. Or hanging out with my cat for 30 minutes when I get home, and we have a nice conversation, and I've taught him more than some of my students. So there is downtime, and I need that because, as you know, Dave, I'm always plugged in and I'm always there, but you need a little bit of that balance, and it works for me. I'm not saying that's the playbook for everybody, but you need a little bit of that just to calm down, and then I'm ready to go the next day.
One thing that I'll just jump in with that real quick is that I love that. And in all the work that I do tons of work with kids, but I also do, work with, Fortune 100 companies and CEOs and things like that. And one thing that I found that a lot of people that are high performing do intentionally, and I definitely preach this, is to schedule in thinking time, right? The high power entrepreneur who's back-to-back meetings, a million things or whatever, like it's hard to say, hey, on Thursday between noon and 3 p.m., cancel all my meetings. I'm going to sit in my office by myself and just think. But it turns out the productivity in those moments, the creativity in those moments, that downtime, that reset actually is not taking away from the hours you have in the week. It's a multiple on an ROI of those hours. And so finding that, of course, something like a 12-hour walk, but like you said, the early morning hours when there's not so many other distractions, that downtime after work with a family member, a pet, just being able to sit and actually be, right? That's what meditation is more than anything, is just the presence of being, opens up the door to so much more, sort of exponential creativity and productivity.
Absolutely. For me, Dave, it's a game changer. It's a life changer. If I didn't have that in the morning, that's why I get there early. If I have a lesson at 6, I'm still there at 5, just to think and have that good discussion myself. And it's powerful, and it works for me, and it creates that balance and gets me going for sure.
Well, I'm going to submit a new treatment for a third book for Colin, his next New York Times bestseller. It's going to be called The 16-Hour Flight. And it's for all the corporate guys like me that have to fly to Saudi and back and all over the world. And, the best mechanisms to conquer your mind and unlock your best life on an airplane for 16 hours. I think that it would be a lot more acceptable in the corporate world, but I'll submit the treatment. Just give it a thought, Colin, because I can't tell the stories like you do and give the lessons like you and Rick throughout, but you are a perfect match for Game Set Life. And I'm so grateful to have you in my life. And thank you so much for providing me the opportunity to walk for 12 hours and raise my own awareness and frequency. It's really enhanced that ripple effect, the tentacles. It's enhanced my life completely. You're amazing, buddy. Thank you.
Well, it's a great pleasure to be with you, David and Rick, to meet you. I know this won't be the last time we connected. And I just got back from Qatar for the World Cup. So I did my own,
Yeah.
15, 16-hour plane ride. So I'll write the next book during that one. I appreciate you guys.
Hey, Dave, before we let Colin go, just 30 seconds. Can he talk about the injury back in 2008, I believe it was?
Yeah.
The
His
burn. I
accident.
think it's because look, it's not like you just decided to be a triathlete and the rest is history. I mean, you had to climb a lot of mountains before you took on Mount Everest. So could you just
Yeah.
throw that out there?
Yeah, I'll give a real concise retelling of that. You know, it's easy to sit here and look at me. Oh, Colin has 10 world records, or Dave was so kind to say such a nice bio on the top of this interview.
Got some records in my jukebox downstairs, but that's all. Go ahead.
You've been a part of setting some big records, my friend.
Okay. Yeah.
But the truth of the matter is, this guy walked across Antarctica, like I did. Turns out that, 10 plus years, about 10 years before that is I couldn't walk at all. And I was traveling in 2008, shoestring budget, middle of nowhere in Thailand. And I made the foolish mistake to jump a flaming jump rope, and it went terribly wrong. That rope wrapped around my legs and lit my body on fire to my neck. Fortunately, the ocean was there, jumped into the ocean to extinguish the flames, which saved my life, but not before about 25% of my body was severely burned. In the interest of time, I don't tell you all the rest of the details, but long story short, I spent time in a rural Thai hospital. I couldn't be moved. I was in the middle of nowhere. I underwent 8 surgeries where there was a cat running around my bed and across my chest in this ICU. And it was a deep, deep, dark place in my mind. And the doctors told me, look, Colin, you will probably never walk normally again. Amazing. And had it been left to my own devices, I would have believed that. But my incredible mother came by and she stayed with me in the hospital for a couple months. And she said, Colin, what do you want to do when you get out of here? Let's set a goal. That confidence that Rick talked about, with the confidence with a capital C, she just wouldn't let it go. She's like, I'm like, Mom, my life is over. She goes, your life is not over. What do you want to do when you get better? Let's set a goal. And I focused on triathlon, ended up becoming a professional triathlete, climbing all the mountains, blah, blah, blah. The story goes on. But the long story short is, it was my biggest and deepest challenge of my life in that moment. And had I been left to my own devices, I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you guys. That's for sure. But I think the moral of that story, and one of the morals for me, is that all of us are going to face challenges in our life. You're going to have setbacks, and you have an opportunity in those moments to say, can I learn from this? Can I grow from this? It's actually an accelerant towards growth and becoming stronger. I am stronger now in my mind because of what my mom taught me. And so when we go through a hard time, or for me, when I go through a difficult time in my life now, when I'm out there in Antarctica, it's minus 50 degrees, the wind's blowing at me, I could die if I make a mistake, whatever. I smile in that moment because I go, oh, this challenge, this setback, this hardship, this is opening up to the actual potential highest high peak moments of my life. I'd rather, people say to me, Colin, are you afraid of dying? And look, I don't want to die. Like, people say, oh, you take these risks. I am afraid of dying, purely. But what I'm more afraid of is not fully living. And fully living means stepping outside of that comfort zone. It means putting in the reps. It means, getting up at 6 a.m. to hit balls with Rick because you have a big dream and you have a big goal, putting in those reps, the challenge, the suffering, and overcoming some setbacks along the way to get to where you want to go.
Well, it's amazing, Dave, because all roads seem to always lead back to mom. A lot of common threads there. And I always tell the kids, I don't want to make light of this, but I always tell the kids when they do well, they're on fire. I mean, his story is beyond amazing, and so many people can be motivated by this. If Colin can do it, I can do it. And that's what I love about this story.
Yeah, I love, and I derive the faith that I'm always being protected and promoted, to think about so many people that would have felt punished. And of course, it does take our mom or someone like our mom to remind us and remember the fact that not only is there something bigger than us that's omniscient, all powerful, and all knowing, but it even loves us more than our mom. Therefore, we are, even in the hardest circumstances, being protected and promoted. And then you carrying it through, both of you in your lives, to pass it on, to be influencers, to be in the flow, not influencers spreading the flu and disease to so many children out there, but influencers inspiring even old middle-aged men like me to go ahead and take a hike out back for 12 hours to change their lives for good. Thank you, Colin, for changing so many lives. I'll send you the treatment for the 6-hour flight. We can co-author it if you'd like. Rick Macci, what an honor to have our guest. Thank you both. We'll see you soon, Colin.
Take care, guys. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Colin.
He's amazing. All
Amazing.
right. Well, we had to go a little OT, so I think we got time for at least one question, Rick. Are you up for it?
I'm ready.
All right, let's start with one of my favorite questions here. What is the difference between good and bad habits?
First off, I mean, it depends on the individual, the way they're looking at everything. Some people might think it's a good habit. In my eyes, I think it's a bad habit. I think at the end of the day, you should always be early. I think you should eat healthy. I think you should exercise. I think you should treat people with respect and gratitude. I think you should appreciate every day. I think you should work hard every day, and then you'll seem like you're hardly working. To me, those are good habits. Bad habits are, in my opinion, things that are bad for your health. What you eat, how you react to things, listening to too much negativity, because all this stuff gets into our brain, and to me, what is good and bad to me is very different than the next person, but this is what works for me. And I think people that have this power to help others, they should pick up on these tips and make minor adjustments in their life, and make better choices, make better habits. The minute you get up, I'm going to make today my best day ever. I said, oh, God, I got to get up today. It's just such a mindset. You know what I mean? Even when there's garbage at the academy on the ground, I pick it up because I look at it as exercise instead of who left this garbage on the ground. It's all how you look at things through what set of eyes. And so that would be the difference between good and bad to me. But at the end of the day, people might think it's a good habit, but in my eyes, it could be a bad one.
Yeah, it's interesting too. And I think, looking in the sport of football, there have been some quarterbacks that we've worked with where a certain coach would say, that's a really bad habit. But these quarterbacks end up, having a different way of doing things. The interesting thing about habits for me is understanding how they aggregate and compound on itself. And you're someone who has helped so many people create the habits that are necessary to achieve the trajectory that somebody wants in their life. But here's the interesting thing. Good habits, we expect instant results. So when we start eating right, or we start exercising, we expect to have big muscles immediately. Or you start practicing your golf swing, you expect to be a scratch golfer. In tennis, I'm sure these kids have this instant gratification of good habits. And the interesting thing about bad habits is that we don't ever expect the result. And I think the reason that this is true is that it takes time for a habit to aggregate. So let me give you an example. I think it takes about 90% of the time till you see a significant result. And so when you have a good habit, you don't see the effect or impact that it's having until you put in the work. And all of a sudden you're like, it seems like overnight, but it's been 11 years that I've done this and now I'm the world's best. But even worse are the bad habits, because, you keep smoking and drinking and eating fatty foods, and you're not sick, you feel fine. But same thing, 11 years later, all of a sudden you're in big trouble because the bad habits aggregate. And so I think the real importance is the impact that good habits and bad habits have, because they both aggregate. They both do not illustrate or show the results until it's too late. You might as well have a positive result when it's too late than one that may even end your life. And I see so many people make this mistake because they don't have the awareness of the impact that good and bad habits or behaviors have on their life. And you end up with good habits being someone like Rick Macci, who gets in his 60s and everyone says, wow, he has everything: a beautiful family, a beautiful business, a beautiful life. He's healthy, he's happy, he's wealthy, he's worthy. And it's not overnight. There are no overnight success. It's just an aggregate or a compounding of these behaviors. Rick Macci, man, every week it gets better. Every week I love being with you. I love your text messages, your emails, and your phone calls. I am telling you, the
Even
world
at 4 in the morning.
needs.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
that's fine. The
listen.
world needs more of Rick Macci, and take that from Dave Meltzer. Meltzer and Macci, making it happen with Game Set Life. I hope you enjoy learning the lessons that will help all of us from the Hall of Famer, Rick Macci. I'm David Meltzer. Thank you, everyone, so much for joining us.
Thanks, Dave.
Thank you, buddy. Awesome.
We'll talk.
We certainly will. Thank you, everyone. Awesome.
All right.
Clear. Thank you, man.
That was good.
Great.
Grady over Brady, so he trumped him.